Right. Now, Israel stepped up its airstrikes overnight, sending around 85 missiles into Gaza City early this morning. This video shows smoke rising over Gaza during the offensive strikes. The death toll in the densely populated Palestinian territory has risen to 19. Earlier on Thursday evening, 2 rockets from Gaza crashed into the suburbs of Tel Aviv. This was the first such attack in 20 years. Joining me in the hangout, we have Jeb Boone, the former managing editor of the Yemen Times, and Tony Badran, the research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. So guys, I want to ask you both what your thoughts are on the most recent developments here in Israel and in Gaza. And Tony, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, what we're seeing in Gaza is a kind of a two-pronged operation. On the one hand, there's the immediate tactical concern which seems to be directed at particular weaponry, Iranian-supplied weaponry, specifically long-range rockets that have been also possibly tied to the earlier strike in October in Sudan, where a weapons factory was struck by the Israelis in all likelihood. And today the former Hamas Politburo chief Khalid Mash'al vowed revenge for the Sudan strike, which sort of indicates a link between that factory and Iranian weapons supplied into Gaza. So you're seeing these long-range rockets now being employed in the conflict, and the Israelis want to go in and take them out as much as possible.
Right. That's what we're hearing about. The targets that are being hit are targets that aren't just political targets in terms of the assassination of the military chief of Hamas, but also where Israelis believe there are missile stockpiles going on and missiles that are brought from Iran that are reaching longer ranges, getting towards Tel Aviv. And also, Al Jazeera English Live, I have a tweet here. This just went up right as we were going live this morning. Air raid sirens in Jerusalem, Israeli police checking into the incident. That was reported by agency France Press, and I'm mangling their accent there, but you know that's the wire service out of France. So I want to ask Jeb, what's your take on what's been happening? We know that ground troops from Israel are approaching the Gaza border, getting ready for an incursion.
30,000 or so.
Right, getting ready for an incursion, and this is getting serious.
Unfortunately, I think it's more the same in terms of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, specifically in Gaza. In 2008, when Israel had a ground invasion into Gaza, over 1,400 Palestinians were killed, 13 Israelis were killed as well. What's important when you look at this kind of issue is to think in the broader political context of how Arab governments, the Israeli government, and the U.S. government use Palestine as a political tool. Just as an example, when I was in Yemen in 2008, the Gaza war was ongoing. Former President Ali Saleh was under a lot of pressure because of his close cooperation with the U.S. government counterterrorism issues. And when that invasion took place into Gaza, government-sponsored protests were held throughout the country. People were handing out banners and Hamas headbands and things like that. But it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic between the new Egyptian government as opposed to the former Egyptian government under Mubarak during 2008. One of the hot-button issues with the Gaza conflict then was the opening or not to open the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, and it's been opened fairly quickly now in this case.
What is the relationship with, I mean, I want to bring up our interest, right? I mean, because obviously we are tied with Israel, with whatever it is that they do. So what does this mean for the U.S. as this continues to play out? At what point does the U.S. get a little bit more involved?
Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that basically for the U.S., the principal issue here is obviously the support for Israeli security, to make sure that the Iranian influence in Gaza is downgraded as much as possible. But there's also, as Jeb was talking about, the Israeli-Egyptian relationship here is going to be very critical. So how the U.S. government and the new Egyptian government are going to work together. I've seen reports that the U.S. is trying to approach the Egyptians to sort of lean more on Hamas to get them to stop, and this will be a test to the capabilities of the new Egyptian government as well, because it's a tight situation for them.
Especially with Morsi, the Egyptian leader, now going into Gaza to show solidarity as well. He's on his way there if he's not already there. And the messiness that's going on post-Arab Spring is what makes this different from what we saw 4 years ago when Israel launched another ground incursion and air incursion into Gaza right after an American election. You have a different political situation now. And I would say it then, and I say it now, and I have it on on a Twitter post that I put up, and I have pulled up on Abby's computer here. Netanyahu wrote right after they launched the airstrikes this time around, "The world must understand that Israel has the right and a total obligation to defend its citizens." No one is questioning that, right? For me, the big deal is that it's not that you have the right to defend yourself; it's how you exercise that right. And here, with wanting to maintain good relations with Egypt in the post-Arab Spring, post-Mubarak era, and you have an Egyptian polity and a leader that is more interested in showing solidarity with Gaza and Hamas, how can Israel respond in a way that doesn't totally, completely sever those ties and encourage Egypt to renege on the peace treaty from 1979?
I don't think it'll be that severe just quite yet, but you have to remember that Netanyahu is up for re-election. And I guess you could call something an incursion into Gaza maybe playing to his conservative base in the same way that a conservative politician would bring up abortion in the United States during an election year.
And
so you're saying other places around the world are just as political as the United States?
and the wild thing is, Jeb, that this is what happened in 2008 too. There were elections right at the other side of 2008 and 2009, and the leadership that brought Israel to war in 2008, at the end of 2008, lost its majority come elections, and they became the minority party in 2009. So is this actually beneficial to a Netanyahu government come its elections in January?
With the Morsi government in Egypt, I would imagine that conservative Israelis and Israelis in general are going to be more concerned with that relationship. And definitely on the conservative side, I could see the party's base becoming a little bit more nervous about this relationship. Like I said before, the opening of the Rafah border crossing so immediately it speaks a lot about the way that Morsi wants to approach these things. Showing solidarity and going there is one thing, but actually taking action is another thing.
So how do you predict this will continue to play out? I mean, we've seen, this whole conflict arise in the past.
Yeah.
What can we learn from how this has played out before, based on what we're seeing right now? Do you think that this will continue to get worse? Do you think it will die down after a few days of just letting off steam on both ends?
No, I mean, there are tactical objectives, obviously, and like I said, targeting these long-range rockets and possibly other kinds of potential, like I heard one report about hitting a drone factory or a depot or something of that nature. So they are targeting specific military assets that are coming from Iran, and the fact that the Iranians, like yesterday, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah alluded also to the Sudan factory. So they're very aware of this connection with Iran and to the ordinances that they're getting from Iran. So I think this is a primary issue. Now, if these rockets continue to fall on cities like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, then that means that the Air Force has not been capable of taking out all of them. So then you will see a more likelihood of a ground incursion into Gaza for a mop-up operation, basically.
Jeb and Tony, I think that's a great way to end this. It'll be interesting to see it play out, I'm sure, throughout the weekend. It's not settling down anytime soon. But thanks so much for being a part of this conversation.